Warm greetings, everyone. On behalf of W4W Foundation, a think tank instituted as a citizens collective, we welcome you to another session of Wednesdays for Water. The conversation today is on water laws and policies in India, and we are hoping that we are going to have a few more sessions on the topic because it's not possible to cover everything in one session. Before we get into the topic of today, let me just brief you about what is Wednesdays for Water. At Wednesdays for Water, the idea is to engage in conversation with water experts, grassroots practitioners, policymakers, and youth, particularly to explore the complex intertwined issues associated with water and the possible solutions people are experimenting and seeking. It has expanded since then to have more activities like Friday Waters and Monday Munching with Women for Water. Besides organizing water workshops, water walks and talks, seminars, special courses, and conference panels, to continue the water conversation in various possible ways, do visit our website to know more about what we are doing. Recently, just 2 days ago, I had our session at the World Water Week where we presented our ongoing research on disaster-led distress on women. But keeping it aside, let me just introduce what we are going to do today. But before that, my name is Mansee Bal Bhargava, and I'm the moderator for the session from W4W Foundation. In today's talk on water laws and policies in India, we can actually dig from the ancient times to the recent time what we have in our policies as well as with the laws. Not many people are aware of the laws and policies that holds today and how those have evolved over time and how the culture has also shaped the laws the way we look at how our colonization has shaped them. All those things can be covered. Apart from that, how all kinds of conflicts, all kinds of resolutions that are made through the laws and policies. To do these talks, we have Avadhesh Pratap ji and Sujith Koonan, Professor Sujith Koonan as speakers, and Simran Sumbre as discussant. And before I invite them to make their, presentations, I will quickly go through their bios. And first, we will invite Professor Sujith Koonan, who is an associate professor at Center for International Legal Studies, School of International Studies in the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. And before joining the faculty, he taught at the Faculty of Law at Delhi University, National Law University of Odisha, Cuttack, SOAS, University of London, and he's completed his PhD from SOAS. So we also have a common friend there, I suppose. We're going to talk about it more. And he has been working a lot and he's part of two well-known Scopus listed international journals, namely Law, Environment and Development Journal and Environmental Policy and Law. His main areas of interest are environmental law, international law, water and sanitation law, and natural resources and human rights. A lot of things to talk about it, Sujit, but before that, we first want to hear you and then take it further. Over to you, Sujit, and really warm welcome once again, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mansee. Let me quickly share my PowerPoint. I
Yeah,
hope it is visible.
yes, it is.
Yes, right. And I have 10 minutes, I guess. No?
Yeah, a little bit
All
more than that. Yeah.
fine. Yes. So I mean, thank you for giving me this opportunity, and this needless to say that this particular topic is very close to my heart, which I have been following and working on for last several years. So today, as Mansee has already mentioned, that it's very difficult to tell about water law in details in 10 minutes or maybe even in 1 hour. So what I'm going to do is certain things. I'm try to give you a sort of a panoramic view about water law. And again, when I say water law, I am not going to focus on one specific law or that, but generally water law as an institution. And then I'm going to actually, very quickly, two or three major features of its assumptions or foundations on which water law in India has been built. And uh, and then very quickly, we will go through like, okay, what are the fundamental problems with that assumptions? Because and that will actually logically take us to even think through like a probable solutions to it. Like, okay, what could be the way to address some of these things, if not all of these things? And this is what I'm going to do. And again, this is primarily on very basic issues, and if at all, I mean, we need to get into some of the details, maybe we can do that during the Q&A session, or when the discussant intervenes. So to start with, I mean, on water law, what we have here is like, I mean, water, as you look at it right now, it is predominantly regulated and governed by the state on the one hand, and certain part of water, I mean, the water regime is primarily controlled by private parties, and that includes individuals as well as entities. But when you look at it, I mean, it is a state of fact. But and when we look at it more academically, like how did we arrive at this situation? And that would tell us a very interesting scenario, very interesting transformation of water law from from kind of a common to some sort of private state control. Because erstwhile common regimes, commons, I mean, we call as you might have heard about global commons, etc., etc. So from the commons to enclosures. And here the enclosure is not completely by private parties, but enclosures or dominance or control by the state, by private parties. It is like a control exercised by state plus private parties. This is one important feature of water law that we need to keep in our mind when we analyze it. Quickly, I mean, the second feature is it is completely fragmented. There is no single water law, and maybe practically it is not even possible. So instead, what we have is various aspects of, I mean, water governance and regulation are governed by distinct laws, like you have irrigation laws, and you have water regulatory authority laws, and you have laws relating to dams, so on and so forth. And that takes us to the third important feature of water law, is that that doesn't mean that all aspects of water are covered by law in India, and which I would call as it is a there is a coexistence of, like excessive presence as well as immense deficiencies. Excessive presence means you will find a lot of attention to irrigation, like irrigation laws, water user association laws, water regulatory authority laws, water entitlements, embankment related laws, dams related laws, so on and so forth. Whereas when it comes to one of the most important function of water, that is drinking water sector, you will not find any specific law relating to drinking water. Instead, you have some minimal way in which it is dealt with through municipality legislations, corporations legislation, basically local body legislations, which means this is what I call as deficiencies in the water sector. I mean, as far as law is concerned. And at the same time, there are certain areas which are well covered by water. And if you look at contemporary context, there is also like an important feature which some people call as water law is turning neoliberal. And by that I mean that it is slowly and slowly moving away from like a welfare oriented, benefit oriented kind of framework, and toward and moving towards more like privatization type thing, or even, I mean, to put it in a very broad way, it is more like commoditization or economicization of water, which means like this is one of the important features of neoliberalization, that, I mean, it tends to see everything with a price tag, or everything with a transactional value. So neoliberal water law is, I mean, it tries to make water in that way as a property, as a commodity, etc., and therefore subject to privatization. And you will see a lot of literature discussing about controversies relating to privatization, not only in India but elsewhere as well. You might have heard about Cochabamba and other thing. So this is the larger canvas of water law in which we have to work with. And from this, I'm going back to, or I'm going back to some of the basic issues, which I call as foundational problems. And I'm going to share three such important foundational problems with water law. Quickly, like, I mean, what the first important issue is water as a property. Water law has been built upon this assumption, or kind of a conceptualization that water is a property. And I'm not going to read all these things. but it's up to you to read. But quickly, like I mean, in 30 seconds, what do we mean by water as property? Because property, in the eye of law, it may mean several things to several people in a typical layperson's point of view. But as far as a lawyer is concerned, like property right means in its extreme case scenario, it includes the right to destroy property, and that is the extent of property right as recognized in you. For instance, I mean, that is why I mean, we don't, none of us care if you simply destroy your mobile phone because it's your private property. We don't care. Even I mean, the law, the public doesn't care about it. And here is what how water law has been developed is by treating water as a property. And that this doesn't mean that it's a private property, because property can be like public property or even private property in that case. So as you see, the essential characteristics of water law, you will see that water as a state property or even as a primary property. Quickly cite an example that I mean, in one of the important principles of water law is riparian doctrine, which means that if you have a piece of land, you will get water rights. So land rights is equal to water rights, and it is like a property connection that you can easily see. The second important aspect is like another assumption that water is unruly, like it's very disorderly. And that is why I mean, you generally we tend to look at floods and droughts as with a lot of inconvenience because it's inconvenient to us. But the point here is that it the reason why we are considering it as unruly, because we, the human beings, expect the water to behave in a particular way. And what is that particular way? A particular way that is beneficial to us, that contributes to our economic activities, our livelihood activities. It means it's like a very tunnel, narrow vision of looking at water, say for instance, like a river as sort of a channel through which water flows. Like very kind of a managerial, bureaucratic or technocratic way of looking at things. And that is and that because of this assumption, our what we generally do is to control the water. Like I mean, control the water by embankments, dams, floodplain zones, as you can see from the slide, so on and so forth. So the law takes up that assumption and then seeks to control whatever is the unexpected behavior of water. And this is quite visible in the case of several laws, for instance, like flood related laws or even disaster management law. If you look at it, you will find this as the basic assumptions on the basic assumption on which it has been built. The third important problem is the way we look at water. Okay, water has its own uses, but at the same time, certain water sources have many other uses. Again, we use it as like a place where utilizable natural resources are stored or nurtured. For instance, classic example is fishes or sand mining. These are the activities, classic examples as activities. So here, the problem is that water is a property, and whatever is there in the water, mostly the utilizable things, are also treated as a property. And the property idea is not limited to this, and it's limited to pretty much everything about nature. And that is why we can sell and buy animals as pets, because it's again like a property, a commodity that can be done in the market. So this is another assumption, and thereby we have laws dealing with fishing regulations. You have laws dealing with various extraction activities in the river. And this part of the law has been developed on the basis of this depository idea. Now, the last point I'm trying to make in 1 minute is that if these are the foundational problems, then are we going to deal with the bigger environmental crisis, water crisis that we are facing with this water law? Whether this water law can help us deal with, for instance, something like climate change, which some of the scientists call as the Anthropocene. Like it's a bigger crisis, uncertainty areas. So again, these points which I'm going to tell. I have 3 points, and these are not very conclusive. I will quickly run through it in a minute or so. That is, the first thing is a kind of a transformation from property to being. And you might have heard about this ongoing discussion about rights of nature. And there is also a new thing saying that, for instance, a river has a right to be not used by human beings in certain context. So whether our law is ready to treat these things as being, and again, this is nothing new in it. If you go back to some of the indigenous cultures, this is how it has been, it was treated to a great extent. I am not glorifying the past, but just to say that, I mean, this is not something completely new. And the second point is, which is extremely important, that is, we have to move from human centrism to other things, like for instance, ecocentrism, or in the context of water, as water centrism. For instance, we have to see, like, I mean, earth as a community, rather than this river, this pond, that pond type of fragmented approach. So we have to start looking at a very broader way, which I call as a decentering of humans, and which means, like, I mean, we have to make a lot of changes in our water law, because these are fundamental issues. The last point is, like, until now we are depending on the state to do everything. I mean, overly depending on the state. I don't mean to say that it's a bad thing, but the point is that we probably have to move from state and other actors. It's not to replace state with something else, but it is to add more things, probably at a very kind of equality, on the basis of the principle of equality. For instance, the whole idea of river dependent communities. And in certain cases, we are forced to consider other living beings as river dependent communities to take care of it. And I'm sorry for rushing through. I will stop here because my time is over. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sujit. I really wanted to hear you more, but I think we will take these discussions more on the discussion side of it, because there are some pertinent questions which are coming forth in my head. But I'm sure Simran has more pertinent questions to take it for all of us, on behalf of all of us. But before we get the discussion rolling, I think it's a good idea to hear from a practitioner's perspective. And I know Avadhesh sir for now good time, and I'm really fortunate that we are having him here. And I know, Sujit, you know him very well. So our next speaker is going to be Avadhesh Pratap sir. And Avadhesh Pratap is a qualified civil engineer with a doctorate in water laws. He regularly delivers visiting lectures on water laws across India, where he engages with all kinds of stakeholders, particularly students from all levels. He has also presented papers at various national and international conferences, including those held in most of the prestigious universities in the country. One of the highlights of his career is the opportunity to interact with diplomats at the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration, which is for training programs for them, where he provides insight on water laws, policies, and governance. And I'm very happy to hear that they are taught about these things. But additionally, he is also serving as a member of the group on legal aspects for interlinking of rivers under the task force of Ministry of Water Resources, Riverfront Development, and Ganga Rejuvenation, which is within the Ministry of Jal Shakti. And he's significantly contributing to the decision-making process which goes around water laws and policies, and he's also practicing a Supreme Court lawyer. So may I invite Avdesh to please make your point. You heard Sujit, and he gave a very basic overview for non-law people like us, like an undergraduate masterclass. So please enlighten us a little bit what's going on in the field of water laws, and where do we stand today. And please unmute yourself. Over to you, sir.
Well, first of all, thanks to Sujit. He presented jurisprudential and basic concept of water law around the globe. And I will discuss according to the need of the conference of law students and other. I would like to tell that water in India was basically used for irrigation, and in 2nd century our ancestors learned to divert water for the purpose of irrigation. And there are some structures which are alive present day scenario, which are evident of water diversion. And British rule came in Britishers came here in 1600, and around 1770 they conquer the most part of India. And in first part of 19th century, they started to encroach revenue rights from the rulers who were in parts of other which were in India, in small parts. They rule small parts of India, and Britishers started to.
Sorry to come in between, sir. Do you want me to play your PPT?
Yeah, play my PPT. But before
Yes.
that,
Sure.
I would like to tell the students about
Yes.
the water law development in our country. And
Okay.
Sujith is because Sujith discuss with the jurisprudential aspect and the basic concept of water. Then I would like to discuss the law process and transformation of laws. Sujit is very right, very correct that water is fragmented, and it is not possible to uh, prepare a comprehensive water law for all these situations in any part of the globe. Then there are many laws of sea, so many laws regarding rivers, so many laws regarding fisheries and irrigation. Mostly the laws were drafted during British period were irrigation laws. And when they conquer India and they conquer the revenue rights from the rulers, they want to enhance the revenue collection, and irrigation was the basic and most important revenue generation industry at that time. Then they started to divert water for the purpose of irrigation, and to regulate the situation they started making regulations and laws. First, in 1829, according to my first slide, uh,
Shall I
they
press share, sir? Shall I
yes
share
yes
your
yes
PPT?
yes
Yes.
yes yes
Okay, I will
first
do
page,
that. Yeah.
they drafted
Yes. Keep-
Embankment Act to maintain and
Okay, let
and
me
to
just go. Yeah.
install. Yes, this is Embankment Act 1829. And then the most important law, which is relevant in present day scenario also, that was the Northern India Canal and Drainage Act 1873. Most of the laws which are irrigation laws in different states are, are drafted with the help of this particular law, the Northern India Canal and Drainage Act 1873. And again in South India, the most important law regarding river conservancy was the Tamil Nadu River Conservancy Act 1884. And at that time, rupees 500 fine was levied on a person who encroach water in the river. Then when we are talking about the post-independent scenario, these are the laws which are most relevant and important prior to independence. And when after independence, the next slide,
Yeah. Is it okay?
yes, after drafting of the constitution, there are some articles which are indirectly working as to regulate water, and water is placed in two lists. Water is not purely a state subject. Some part of some element of water are with union list under entry 56 of the Constitution of India. Water is partly a state subject and partly a union subject. When we are talking about rivers and regulation of river valleys, then we would have to move to union list under entry 56 of the Constitution. And we are talking about irrigation, hydropower, groundwater, and other water elements, then we would have to go with state list under entry 17 of the Constitution. And some articles are related with Constitution of India according to constitutional jurisprudence, development of constitutional jurisprudence by our higher judiciary. Article 21, Article 19, Article 14, and so basically entry 20 of concurrent list also talk about water issues. Next slide.
Wow.
Next slide. These are the articles 131, 36, and 143 related with Supreme Court of India to resolve the issue between two states or between states and union. We have some water disputes in our country, and these were regulated by these laws and in Supreme Court. Apart from Article 262 of the Constitution, the resolution mechanism to resolve a national water dispute. Next slide. Next. Water governance is a three-tier governance in our country. That is union, state, and Panchayat Raj institution. And there are some entries which are related with subject of water. Land under entry 18. Land means the land which is adjacent to river or water bodies. And water purely under state list under entry 17 of state list, means list second. And there are some other entry 21, 17B, which are related with fish, aquatic animals, and rivers. Some are also, next slide, some more entries are here in the Constitution, like entry 38 of list third, means concurrent list, that is hydroelectricity and power generation. It is again under the water law regime, entry 38 of list third. And these are other entries, water transport and navigation, 24 union list, 30 union list, and entry 13 state list, entry 32 concurrent list. Next slide. Sujith discussed about property and water. Basically, when we talk about water, before 1996, at international level, water was considered as a common good. And after the success of sale of bottled water, water was shifted to economic good in 1996 at international level. Now, water is not a common good. Water is social good, basically common / social good. Water is under the regime of social goods before 1996 at international level. But now water is, in 1996, it was established and fixed by the world that water is now considered as a economic good, and water is now an economic good, and governments are charging to facilitate water to their citizens in many countries. But in India, it is little difficult because our constitution guaranteed that we will form a social welfare state. And according to the scheme of the constitution, it is very difficult in India. And it is also a big challenge of governance, that how water would be conserved and water would be available for all the citizens in the form of fresh water. It is a challenge because of only that concept that now water is an economic good, but in India, we are not treating it as an economic good because of some constitution obligations. And when we are talking about interstate water dispute, now we have drafted River Basin Management Act on the at the place of River Board Act, and we have two laws: Interstate Water Dispute Act 1956 and River Board Act. And River Board Act now is revised and renamed as the River Basin Management Bill 2019. It is not an act till now because most of the bill which were passed in 21st century are not facing parliament to convert it as an act, because water is not a issue of vote casting till date. When water will be a issue of vote casting, then these bill will immediately convert it to act. Sujith is very much aware. He has written some books, and he is very well aware that since 1970, model bill, which is called as groundwater bill, is pending since 1970 till 2024 to be an act after several amendments. And finally, in 2016, it was redrafted and amended, but still it is a bill. Whether it is the need of the hour to convert these bills to the act to control and regulate and to govern our water resources in a proper manner. Next slide. This is the most important law. Rajasthan, state of Rajasthan was drafted for the conservation of lakes. Next.
I worked on this project, by the way.
Very good. I can help you in the Rajasthan. Some government officials are my friends. And one more thing, that Rajasthan is very keen to conserve their water resources, and after 90 years, it is an estimate of international bodies that it will be a very green area of India, and the most green area of the India. And Punjab and Haryana will be converted in deserts in 40-50 years. This is the estimate of world community.
Yes, but we worked on the authority. Sir, I have to intervene here because we should start the conversation. So maybe I will request you to wrap up as soon as possible. Okay? Yeah.
Okay. Within 2 minutes, I will wrap up. Sure. And kindly shift my slide to the next slide.
Yeah.
Next. And now I orally present. Basically, we have some water policies when after 1980, when the ministry was formed separate in the name of Ministry of Water Resources, then it was felt that because of mass of water as a subject in state and union, and then there will be much better when a national water policy was issued to regulate and govern water. And first time in 1987, water policy was issued, and Mr. Iyer was the chief architect of this particular policy. And then in 2002, the next policy issued after some amendments according to the need of the hour. And then in 2012, next policy was issued, and the most important part of the policy of 2012 was under section 2. It was clearly mentioned that there should be a law at national level to regulate and govern water issues. And after that, National Water Law Framework Bill was formed under the chairmanship of Mr. Yogendra Kumar Alag, and I was also the member of the drafting team. And then it was revised by Modi government, and in 2016, it was it was converted as an National Water Law Framework Bill, but still it is bill not face Parliament to convert as an act. And now we have drafted policy 2000 National Water Policy 2020, but because of some challenges and dispute among the members of committee, it is not in public domain till date. The most important part of that the members and committee and the policy discard RO if there is 5 mg per liter, uh, 5 yes 5 mg per liter, uh, less than 500 mg per liter. RO is no discarded in India, and when the policy will in public domain, then RO business will definitely be effective. Now you can start the show of question and answer.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot. And it's a good time. You heard Simran, both our speakers. You heard something from the theoretical perspective, giving an overview by Sujith, and then what's going on ground and what's going on with the government. So we are very happy to invite Simran Sumbre as our discussant today, who is a PhD student at the Department of Geography and the Environment at Syracuse University, New York. Her research examines how groundwater availability, access, and use are impacted by and respond to the social power structures of caste and patriarchy in drought-prone regions of India. She has previously worked on issues of participatory groundwater management across India with organizations like Aquadam, Make Pine, Sopecom, and she has an academic background in political science and water policy and governance. So super happy to have you, and I'm also looking forward to have you as Friday Waters Thesis Club in sometime very soon. So over to you, Simran. You heard both of them, and you know that you are representing all of us here for the conversation. It's all your time now, 25 minutes, and I will take a minute of excuse from here because I have somebody at the door. It's a human thing. Please take charge, Simran, and take over. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. Is my voice audible?
You are
Yes.
audible and loud and clear. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sujit sir and Pratap sir, for your very enlightening talk. I will just summarize what we discussed today to us into the discussion. Sujit sir, you talked about our foundational problems in the water laws that we have as how our laws look at water as a property which needs to be controlled and dammed in a way. And that is also coming from a place where what we consider water as unruly when it does not behave in a certain way that we want it to behave, or when it's not stable or certain, we want it to behave the way that it would make itself useful for us. And the final part of it is we don't see water as part of our nature, part of us, part of humans, but as something that is different from us, as not a separate, as something that we need to have power over, which is and that is where you brought us to a paradigm shift that we need to move towards, is from moving from a human-centered approach to a nature-centered or an earth-centered approach. And in this, the law comes into play is your argument that while we move away from the humans, it does not mean that the state gives away its responsibility of handling and managing these resources, but instead it is important that other communities are brought together with the state to manage and govern our resources. One of them is water. So thank you so much for that. I have a lot of questions about it, but Pratap sir, you talked about how our water law has transformed from the colonial period, and sometimes it is not even transformed from the colonial period with the change of times and how the ways of the world has changed, how we look at water, how our needs have changed. In a modern world, we still live in a colonial period law, which is still not amended. Like one of the examples is the groundwater law. One of the important things is with the success of the sale of bottled water, which also Sujit sir brought out, is the new liberalization and commodification of water. Water stopped being a common good and a social good, which could be given to everyone for free, which was a right for everyone, has now become a commodity and has now become an economic good, which most corporations profit out of. It's a big index, like a stock market index, that people sell water and water properties. So that was an interesting point. And the last thing that I wanted to highlight is how what Pratap sir highlighted was water is still not a vote casting element. People do not vote based on the availability, accessibility, not just physical, but social accessibility of water. We do not consider that when we are voting during our elections. So these are really amazing points, and I got to learn a lot. As a person that is just a citizen, and Suji sir, this is a question for you. On the point that you said, we need to bring in other communities, like the river communities or indigenous communities, in the way we govern and manage to the table with the state. I wanted to ask, why is the role and the control of or giving the power to the communities that are dependent or close to the nature, like the indigenous communities, so important in our laws or managing and governing our resources like water?
Thank you.
Basically, okay, Sujit first.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So, uh, see, I mean, our law, and for that matter, many other things, is claiming to be science driven. And part of the problem with that is that we rely on the so-called experts. So everything is determined by experts. And in some ways, I mean, you and I many others in this group are part of that club called Experts Club. So we take the agency of the people. So this is one thing. And then the next problem is, while we claim to be the people of knowledge and people of solutions, we have a tendency, and the system has a tendency to completely undermine what we call as the traditional knowledge. For instance, I mean, these river dependent communities. And there are, because in my little field work, I have found that, I mean, many community at a very small scale, local scale, many communities are managing their water resources in a better way. And they have their own customarily developed rules, say, for instance, about when to catch fish, what quantity of water can be taken for what purposes, etc., etc. And since nobody from the outside is forcing them to follow it, and since all these things, all these rules have come from inside, and there is a strong moral force behind those rules, like everybody is kind of feeling compelled to follow it. In fact, I mean, that's not like a pressure exerted scenario, but it's like, I mean, these are voluntary in its effect. So that's what I said, that I mean, that doesn't mean that we have to ignore science. That doesn't mean that we have to shift from science to community knowledge. It is that, I mean, both these things are relevant, and we probably have to take positives from the both, and without excluding anything. And that is why, I mean, because in many cases, river dependent communities have a better notion about it. For instance, I mean, I will stop with one simple story, that in certain cultures, I mean, generations have a connection with a tree, because tree has a longer life than human beings. So the younger generation feels that, oh, this is the tree under which my grandparents were buried. What does that mean? It means that, I mean, I have to take care of this tree. And there is an expectation that my future generation would also look at the tree in the same way. So this is a generational things. I'm not talking about 10 years or 20 years, generational things. And local knowledge, community knowledge have been developed on in that sense. So some way we have to recognize it. So that was the larger point I was trying to make, Simran.
Now over to Simran. Simran, you asked a very good question. Basically, we are working according to your question. It is called decentralized governance. And in India now, one group that is called stakeholder governance is initiated in India, and one that type of group by way of Water Users Association was given legal status after the success of the decentralized governance, and water was governed by stakeholders. And there are so many people in India who work for water through indigenous knowledge and traditional practices. Sujit is very right. We have a rich culture of traditional knowledge and indigenous knowledge and traditional practices. And I am developing these practices and knowledge with IIT Roorkee. We are going to publish a literature which I shall supply of online to all of you in the soft copy. All the experts around the globe, I will supply it, and it will be published in hard copy also. And then we will, our new generation will learn after, because we have lost some a part of indigenous knowledge and traditional practices. Still, these are found in different areas and different parts of the country at different level, because the topography of India and globe is altogether different according to different parts. Traditional knowledge and indigenous knowledge and traditional practices are different. To conserve our natural resources, and we are basically the teachers in the in irrigation and water diversion. All all the world countries learn water diversion for irrigation from us. We have started it, then Africa, then Europe, then US. And we have so many other traditions. And we have a very rich literature of our ancestors. They define and they pen down and they made the traditional practices and indigenous knowledge to they transfer the knowledge to the generations. And still alive, we would have to work to go to the field and to work with them to understand their knowledge. And we have did it in most part of the India, and we are developing a literature, a very good literature for the sake of our most important natural resource on the planet, that is water. Any more question?
Thank you so much. Thank
Over
you
to
both.
Simran.
Yes, thank you for your answers. We have a question from the audience. Mr. Chandu, could you please ask your question? Please feel free to ask the question that you've put in the chat box. If you're not able to unmute yourself, I can ask the question for you as well. Okay. So Sujit sir, this is a question for you. Mr. Chandu is asking, could you please shed light on the Chinese transboundary approach vis-a-vis Brahmaputra, especially the legal aspects of it? Could you briefly go answer that question? Avadhesh sir, you could also. We can move on to the other next.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Sir, we'll take you right after this, okay? Just hold on to your
Hello?
question, please. Sujit, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Transboundary water issues with China, it is not just a tricky issue in Brahmaputra or in other basins. I mean, there are quite a lot of other issues because many of the Himalayan rivers have origin in that jurisdiction. So the point here is, again, from a legal point of view, there are some framework in international law, which we broadly call as international water law, that talks about certain kinds of rules and principles like cooperation, cooperative management and governance, etc., etc. But part of the problem, it's not just with India, it's not just with China, but India also, because for some reason, I mean, we don't like that framework, so we are not part of that framework. We have chosen not to be a part of that treaty, which is known as the Water Courses Treaty 1997. And so is the case with China. And it's not India and China. I mean, almost all countries in the region, I mean, they are unwilling to be part of it. Now, the point is that does that mean that India is completely aversive to all kinds of transboundary cooperation? Actually, not, because we have other examples of cooperative framework with the Pakistan in Indus Basin, or with Nepal, or with Bangladesh, and we have multiple sort of arrangements. Okay, I don't mean to say that these are all unproblematic, but still, with all its problems, they are working. They are working towards kind of ensuring cooperation. But until now, we could not manage to make that sort of arrangements with China, and that is again going to be like extremely problematic, because I mean, there's already some news that I mean, some developmental activities are going on in the upper riparian region of various river basin, not just Brahmaputra for that matter. But as of now, I mean, my understanding is that there is no kind of certain, I mean, cooperation methods are not evolving. Actually, I can't see anything evolving in that way so far. And the solution, of course, is they have to sit on a table and then sort this out, but which is not coming as of now.
Thank you so much, Sujit sir.
Hello. Hello.
Yes. Please go ahead with your
Yes,
question.
shall I proceed?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening to all of you and respected panelists. Myself, Dr. Natraj. I'm from Mysore. I am the chairman of the law department, principal of a law college, ASS, and now I am the director of Vidya Vikas Legal Institute from Mysore. So my question to both the expert is, Madam, we have facing a lot of dispute and also the issues relating to water, especially in order to overcome with the sharing of water, or what we call it as allocation of water. So there is a lot of dispute between call it as the integrity and as well as my question is it possible to interlink of liver, which is economically and ecologically viable by using the modern technologies? Because so there is a
Sujit.
for and against debate is going on as far as the interlink of liver to overcome with the allocation of water between the riparian states. So what's your opinion and the suggestions?
Million worth question. I think you will be tempted to answer. Sujit, would you like to take it, or Avadhesh sir takes it? Yeah.
I mean, either way, I'm fine. I mean, yeah, this,
Go
why
ahead.
don't
You go
why
ahead
don't
first. Yeah. It's a hot topic. We had sessions on interlinking, but go ahead.
Avdesh sir, you're on mute.
I know Dr. Avadhesh is expert in both.
Oh, you have to unmute yourself. Maybe Sujit, you can speak because we are not hearing him.
Okay. Yeah, fine. As far as interlinking of river, of course, I mean, I am not technical expert to understand it is, but again, I mean, from a law and ecological point of view, because my my understanding of the whole idea of river linking is it is based on the notion that certain basins are in excess and certain basins are in shortage. So I generally, I mean, I call it in my classroom it as a paracetamol approach. I mean, if something is excess here and lower here, the best solution is to bring the excess from here to there. But the point is, some of these ecological experts have been arguing that that is that is a wrong notion. The wrong notion in the sense that it is excess because that is how we perceive it. But throughout the history, rivers have been, running in that way. Certain times, rivers have been changing their course, and if you look at in Google, certain rivers have changed completely their course of their course. So this is the organic way in which rivers behave. But it is big. So my larger point is, it is it is fraught with a lot of problems. For instance, this idea of excess and deficiency, and the formula that, okay, it can be solved in this way. It is, in my view, it is, in my understanding, it is an oversimplified approach with nature, like all other things. Whereas nature is that not simple. It is far more complicated than what it appears to be. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Advesh sir, you're on mute.
He has to unmute himself, actually. Please, sir, you have to unmute yourself all the time. Over to you. Simran, take it over, yeah?
Yes. So I had one last question before we have any other questions from the audience as well. Sujit sir, you mentioned, and I think Advesh sir also talked about how we have had laws that are so dominant about irrigation, because definitely the most consumption of water in India comes for agriculture, and that is, there is efficiency in the drinking water laws. But not recently, like a decade ago, right to water was identified as a human right to water. Everybody needs to have access, irrespective of where they are. And with that regard, I wanted to ask, is this human right to water actually for all, or is it only identified in the eyes of the law to the people that live in housings that are recognized or formal settlements, and not the informal settlements that are what we call in colloquial terms slums? Do they also have the right to water and the access to water from the municipal corporation under the human right to water? So if both of you could answer that as
Yeah, I see. Human rights, as it is understood in the context of Indian Constitution, or be it international human rights law, it is supposed to be universal, in the sense that it doesn't matter who you are if you are a human being. So what matters is the species membership. If you are born as a human being, if you are a human being, then you are entitled to it, regardless of whether you live in a well-planned, so-called legal habitation, or in a so-called illegal, unauthorized settlements. So human rights can't make, particularly basic human rights, can't make any sort of discrimination on the basis of it. And this is how the idea of human right to water has been developed, at least in India. Although at the international level there are some contrary opinions. For instance, in the way in which it has been formulated by the United Nations. They talk about pricing and other aspects to it, but at least when it comes to India and the Indian Constitution in mind, then it is universal. So it can't make any difference, or it should not make any difference. If it makes any difference, then it can't be treated as human rights. No, then because then the problem is, for instance, take your example as slums. The problem is, then we have a very narrow definition of human beings. Means only those rich people are humans and not the poor people. Only living in better settlements are the human beings, not. And this is same as how we have done with the indigenous population, women, and many other things, because they were slaves and they were not considered as human beings in certain part of the history. So we will be making the same mistake if we try to interpret the human right to water as in a very, very narrow sense. Simran.
Thank you so much, Sujit sir. Advesh sir, do you want to
Yes.
chime in?
Hello. Are you hear me?
Yes, we hear you,
Simran?
sir. Please continue.
Yes. Basically, one question you made regarding interlinking words. Basically, we have started to interlink our rivers, and 30 links are finalized to link the rivers. And the concept is to supply water from surplus basin to deficit basin. But somehow Sujith Koonan is also very correct. When river change their course, then it will be very difficult to manage the installed structure to run. And basically, river change their course in centuries, and in long time it will take to change the course of river. Technically, we are well and we are sufficient to interlink the rivers, and we have already started on 3 projects, and one is almost complete. That is Ken Betwa link in eastern in UP and Madhya Pradesh, and so many area, so large area will be benefited in drinking water facilities and irrigation purposes. And the area which is backward because of lack of water will definitely develop when the linking facility, the water facility after completion of linking will be given to the people. And now I think you want to ask one more question. Kindly repeat.
Sir, can we move to the next question? We're also running out of time. We'll take one last question from Mr. Divyang. You've posted your question on Zoom. Would you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Okay.
Yes, so thanks, I think. Just wanted to understand any thoughts on the water quality, specifically for the drinking water purpose, because whatever the water being supplied, I think there are no assurance of water being supplied is a potable. Either it might have a chemical contamination or a microbiological contamination, which is a very direct impact on human health. So is there any laws, and thoughts on those laws which are, I mean, available and also important to enact on it? And second, I think the follow-up question, do you think the putting the water being supplied in through pipe connectivity can be put up into the food category, which might, help us in terms of enacting very stringent conditions on actually supplying water with which are meeting the basic, the WHO or a BIS standards?
Yeah. See, okay.
Your question is very good, but the practical problem is that to drinking water purposes and potable water supply, we are dependent on water treatment, and we are not able to supply fresh water to the large population of the country. That in the course of uh, treatment of water, some impurities persist, and practically it is not possible that everyone must provide it potable water as clean water. Some impurities are there when water is treated, like example of Delhi. Delhi, there are 3 types of supply in Delhi. One is Ganga water from UP, and another is Yamuna water, which is flowing through Delhi. There are 3 treatment plants on Yamuna to supply water, but it is the water of Yamuna is so impure that complete treatment is not practically possible at any process. Then in some areas, potable water is of very good quality, and in some areas, water is not very good quality. And we would go with that situation because we cannot form water. Water is naturally available as it is.
Thank you so much, Avadhesh sir. I think we have run out of time for our discussion. So thank you so much all for coming and discussing and sharing your thoughts and questions. Over to you, Mansee.
Yeah, thank you, Simran. Thanks a lot. You see how time flies. 1 hour is really nothing to discuss such important topics. But before we end, I also have some pressing questions, and I'm going to ask very simple questions to both of you. Probably that also lays the foundation for our part two of this the discussion which we would like to have. I had already posted in my chat box, and I'll just read it out from there to make it easier. So, Sujit, we were discussing through your slides when you did talk about the community engagement part of it. But both of us are common scholar. I have looked through your work and all. How far our formal policies and regulations allows or is there any enough leverage to really talk about self-regulation? Because we have been doing it without the government. The self-organizing approach is there. But do we have really room in our policies or any kind of articles or laws where we can embed self-regulation? And then I'll ask the next question to Avdesh. You can keep it simple and we take it up next time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That requires a very long answer, but again, to cut it short,
Yes.
see, my answer is yes and no. And
Okay.
the answer is yes, because certain aspects of participation, decentralization norms are
It's
present
happening.
in water law. It's not happening, it's actually, there is law compels it. Basically, law forces the state as well as the community to participate. And the classic example is farmers' participation laws.
Yes.
And it has been. But the point here is that whether the reason why I said no is why it is problematic, because the idea of participation came from the top, not
Top.
from the bottom.
Yes. Yes.
So,
You nailed
so
it. You just
yeah, this
nailed it.
was, yeah, it was all like an idea imposed on farmers, for instance, to participate. And that apparently made it problematic and unviable in many cases. Because I mean, suddenly law forces it, and the state missionaries wake up and they start to implement it. And in I mean, in my traveling, I have found that I mean, many of those water user associations are redundant. And
Yes.
but that doesn't tell you anything about the value of public participation, community participation, or self-regulation. But it is partly, the problem is with how you internalize and impose, from where it comes. In this case, it
Yes.
came from the top, even beyond the boundary, from various developmental agencies, Asian Development Bank, so on and so forth. Yeah, so maybe that requires a full
Yes. So
discussion.
thank you so much, Sujit, because I will be very keen to discuss how to democratize water governance. And that's where when I was really looking at this question. And related to the same question, I have a question for you, Avdesh, and that's about as a timeline question. Because we, as a civilization, we started with water as, a spiritual entity, or water as being, for that matter, when we were practicing animism as a religion during the Vedas. We had animism as a religion. From there, we moved on to making water as a resource and infrastructure and all kinds of things. And now there is a discourse again where part of Ganga was made being, but it is taken back. So Ganga is no more a being. I think the discussion on being becomes important then when because we are supposed to move beyond the anthropocentric way of looking at the water. But Avdesh, I would like to know from you, where is the room to really consider water and rivers for water and rivers, and human beings are less really looked at as the only appropriators of the resource. I don't see, at least in constitution, in my ignorant sense, that we have really a provision apart from fundamental duties where we talk about water for other beings. We don't have that provision, or maybe please enlighten me. Over to you. How do we bring that in?
Basically, Indian judiciary developed constitutional jurisprudence and water jurisprudence in our country. There are so many case laws which are water supply to potable water to the citizen of the country under
Yes.
Article 21 is a
Yes.
fundamental right. In Subhash Kumar versus State of Bihar, it was well settled. And recently, in 2018, Justice Rajiv Sharma in Nainital High Court declared river as a living entity.
Yes.
And it was sub judice in Supreme Court. after the judgment of Supreme Court, if Supreme Court also allow the same, which was decided by Nainital High Court, Uttarakhand High Court, then river will be considered as like human being, and
Yes.
all the rights under fundamental right clause of the Constitution will be with the rivers, and one person for the river can file a case when there will be any discrimination and any other encroachment of river, and it is well settled by Uttarakhand High Court. And in New Zealand Constitution, it is provision of the Constitution that river is a living entity.
Yes,
Then
but
I am very
it's not
hopeful.
coming as, sorry, it's not coming as part of a constitutional article. That's what I meant. I mean, how far are we from there? But we can continue discussing this in the following sessions, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a good time to keep the discussion open. So we are not closing the discussion for today, and we say that we have more to discuss. So I'm really looking at two clear discussions from here on. One is democratizing water, or looking at how to do more water governance from both ways, but at the same time looking at the possibility of even dehumanizing in terms of the water laws, and looking at more from the point of view of water for all instead of water for humans. So going beyond that, and where is the room in our laws and policies? That definitely, if any amendments are required in some articles or something. So we have more to talk about these sessions, but for now, it is a good time, and it's really more than what we should be doing in Wednesdays for Water. But thanks to all the participants here in Zoom and on YouTube for watching us. And importantly, we would like to thank both our speakers, Sujith and Avadhesh Pratap, for wonderful insight from the theoretical perspective, as well as what's going on in the ground, and especially in the courts. And our deep gratitude to our discussant, Simran, who has really represented as well. And we shall continue with Wednesdays for Water sessions, with more Wednesdays to come. And do tune with us for not only for Wednesdays, but also for Friday water sessions, and for Monday munching and musing with Women for Water. We are continuously trying to keep the conversation going for the urge to water conservation. And do keep checking our social media accounts and website www.w4w.in for regular updates. Thanks once again to all our speakers, as well as all our participants who have asked questions and who have been patiently listening to this conversation. Do take care of yourself, and we see each other soon. Goodbye.